Good, I hear you loud and clear.
All right, it's 4 p.m. I'd like to call the Finance and Audit Committee to order today, Tuesday, January 28th. Let's see, before we get to the roll call, we have a participant who's remote, Chris Rittler today, and I am going to make clear for the record and should be reflected in the meetings that this is being conducted pursuant to California Government Code, Section 54953. Paragraph B, in that committee member Chris Rittler is participating from 52 East Maple Street, Steamboat Springs, Colorado, 804487. Committee member Rittler is participating by Zoom webinar in accordance with the Brown Act. Each teleconference location has been identified in the notice and agenda for this meeting. And I note for the record that we have a quorum of committee members present in person. We'd now like to request that committee member Rittler respond to the following questions and confirm certain matters for the record. Chris, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can, George.
Great. Were you able to hear the proceedings on this end up until now?
Yes, I have.
Do you have a copy of the agenda for the meeting?
I do.
Have you posted the agenda at the location where you are?
Yes.
Is your location reasonably accessible to the public such that any member of the public could participate in this teleconference from your location if he or she wished to do so?
Yes, it is.
Is there any member of the public there with you?
No, there's not.
Okay, very good. Let's see. I would now ask any member of the committee to speak up at this time if such committee member has not been able to clearly hear committee member Rittler. Hearing no comment, the record should reflect that all committee members present have indicated that they were able to hear committee member Rittler clearly. I would now like to advise the committee that any votes taken during the teleconference portion of this meeting must be taken by roll call. Okay, so we'll do that. And now I will proceed with the roll call. George Savage, I am here. Stephen Casani. Ken Levine.
Present.
Chris Rittler.
Present.
Michelle Takai.
Here.
Bill Urban.
Here.
Mark Wacer. And let the record reflect that Mark is not here. He informed us that he is traveling today and could not attend. So there's 6 of the 7 members present, 5 of us in person. So we're good to go. At this point, I'd like to move to item 2, oral communications for items not on the agenda. Are there any speakers who would like to talk to us on items not on our agenda today? I don't see anyone in the room. Looking for hands online. I don't see any hands online. Okay. So we'll move to presentations. Item 3. And what we're intending to do here is we really want to welcome Mark Linder, who has graciously agreed to come out of retirement to be the town of Portola Valley's interim town manager. I just want to extend our welcome to you and hoping maybe you could just say a couple of words by way of introduction. Mark has a storied background of 30 plus years as a variety of executive positions, including managing the town of Campbell, coming out of retirement to be the interim manager of this city of Sonoma, town of Windsor. So he's very well qualified and we're lucky to have him. Maybe you can walk over to a microphone so that everyone can hear you. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's great because everyone's on Zoom.
All right, is this working?
Yes, sir, I think it is.
Right. It has little red lights, so I'm presuming that means something. Anyway, thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee and commission. First of all, thank you to all of you for your willingness to serve on this very important committee. It's one that's going to be has been dealing with and will continue to deal with a lot of critical issues. So I appreciate you lending your expertise and time and energy on this. Yes, I am the interim. As I was telling Michelle, I failed retirement. I retired the last day of 2016. And I was 70 at that time and figured that was enough. But a few years later, I got bored. So I contacted, then the company was Management Partners, and said, you know, I'm kind of bored. Can you find something? And they were having trouble finding somebody for Windsor. Windsor was famous because the mayor had 13 women accusing him of sexual misbehavior. And the council finally got him off and so on. So the city manager there was burnt out from all of this. And it was COVID time too. So I interviewed and found I loved the work and had another opportunity with Sonoma. There they had three council members quit in 6 months. And so they were in kind of their own turmoil. And I loved it there. And I was just looking for a place that I could drive to. I live in Santa Cruz. I have in Santa Cruz since 1995. And so far I'm enjoying it here. And I wanted to come by and just say, you know, I'm welcome to talk to any of you. I'll come by occasionally to this august group. And it is an interim position. There was a question, are we recruiting? We will be, the council on the 12th of February will be making a decision about which recruiting firm, which search firm we'll be using. Both of them I've worked with, so it's not new territory. So yes, we will be recruiting and we'll see where that goes. But in the interim, we try to get things done. And one of the big things to get done is the financial issues that you guys are grappling with. I couldn't be happier to have Tony here helping out on all of this. He's already been invaluable to me. And I know the same is to work with you. But I know you have a lot to do. And I'll stay for a little while. Then my wife's recovering from hip replacement surgery, so I need to get myself home to make sure dinner is made, which I do every day anyway, but then, and she's doing fine. But it's a beautiful community. I'm going to really like working here. And it energizes me in a sense, the challenge is here. And I'm optimistic with the people I've met and the staff I've met. Yes, there are challenges. Yes, we're a little short of staff. Yes, we this, that, and the other. But there's good energy and I feel it. And I'm looking forward to working. Thank you. So I will be coming around, Mr. Chair, to see you one-on-one. I'm trying to reach a number of the chairs one-on-one just to kind of get a sense of what you're up to and what you're feeling. So that doesn't mean I won't talk to the rest of you. I will. I'm just trying to hit some of the chairs right now of the key committees. I had a vice mayor help me sort through the committees, since you have quite a few, sort through the committees and the commissions to go to first. So I think it's very helpful. Yeah, we have High Energy Council too. So thank you so much. And have a good meeting. I'll just sit here for a while and then I'll slip out.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mark. We really appreciate having you on board and I'm going to look forward to talking to you one-on-one and we'll work through all these issues that we're dealing with here. We're already on a good trajectory, I think. Thank you. Okay, let's see. With that, we will move along to the approval of the minutes. The minutes of the last meeting, November 4th, 2024, are attached to the packet. Do I have any comments on the minutes? Do I hear a motion to approve?
I move approval of the minutes as submitted.
Second.
I've got a second, and I'm supposed to do roll call, I guess, because we're doing remote, so we're going to be Brown Act compliant here. Ken Levine, do you vote in favor of approving the minute?
I vote in favor.
Bill Irvin,
Yes.
Michelle Takai.
Yes.
Okay, Stephen Pisani.
Yes.
Chris Rittler,
Yes.
and George Savage, the chair. I vote in favor as well. Minutes are adopted. All right, excellent. Now we'll move to new business. We have 4 items, which you can all see here, and we will begin hearing from Tony McFarland on our financial update. Then I just want to say we're going to try sort of a new arrangement here. After Tony tells us what he has to tell us, committee members can ask clarifying questions, but we'll reserve discussion until we then hear from the public. So we'll do clarifying questions, then we hear from the public, then we'll have our committee discussion because we'll incorporate members of the public's comments that way. And then we'll move on. Okay, so we'll start with you, Tony.
Thank you, George. First item is a finance update. Going to be focusing on our investments. There's been many questions about where exactly are our funds being held. And so I put a little chart together where we have about $22 million in cash as of December 31st. About 18.8 million of that, or 85%, is in our Schwab investments, and those are currently yielding about 4.33%. We have 1.7 million in LAIF, which is earning 4.43%. Approximately 1.1 million in Bank of America. That's not an interest-bearing account. And Tech CU, which is our general checking account, about 493,000 there. There are some interest earning components to the account, but it's pretty much a money market, and it's about 11 basis points. And looking at our interests for calendar year 2024, we earned about $929,000 in interest, 833,500 in Schwab, a little under 95,000 in LAIF, and a little bit under 1,300 for Tech CU. Now, this is net earnings. We had dividends and interest of 852,000, but we also have to adjust our accounts to market value, and so the market value depreciation a little under 19,000 for the year in 2024. Net earnings for fiscal year 24-25. This is from July through December. Earnings are interest and dividends of a little bit under 475,000, less market value depreciation of 11,592. That doesn't add up. It should be more than that. Apologies there. That was a typo on my part. Also, during 2024, there were 3 rate cuts in the Fed rates. Beginning of the year was 5.25 to 5.5% was the range. There was a rate cut in September of 24 of 50 basis points. And then another 25 basis points in November and another 25 basis points in December. We did make a move in our Schwab account in October with the first rate cut. Interest has actually hasn't been, interest rates have gone up, or interest earnings have gone up October, November, December. So the move did help with our yield. But we're going to continue monitoring these rates, and when we make any allocation changes, I'll discuss these with Bill before we make any changes. And then the other item that I included was we received a property tax summary from Paula Cohn for 24-25. I included that in the packet. Just a few points that she wanted to raise is the median sales price did go down. However, the number of sales increased. So, so we're going to receive more because of that. Also, she noticed that we're starting to see some Prop 19 reallocations. So that's somebody transferring their Prop 13 base from another jurisdiction if they buy a house in Portola Valley. She said there was 3 that she identified. 2 were within San Mateo County. The third one, she wasn't sure where the transfer came from, but the person did move into San Mateo County or Portola Valley and brought their Prop 13 base with them. Property tax, the assessed value went up 4.6%, comparisons to the county of 5.4, I believe it was. We are looking at an increase in property tax revenue moving forward. So that's all I have for the finance updates. Did you want me to continue?
Quick question, clarification on the, I understand why we need a reasonable amount of cash in non-interest bearing accounts, but I'm curious, at the beginning of last year, we had 3.8 or so million. Is that the right number? It seems like a large number to be in non-interest bearing or virtually non-interest bearing.
Talking about, well, it's, this was right as we got our property tax distribution from the county, and that comes in December. So if we don't move the cash fast enough, then yeah, we're gonna have large balances. And also, yeah, it's temporary. Yeah. And also this year, we had to pay our first installment of the sheriff's contract, about $900,000.
Another clarifying question.
Yes.
My recollection is that the interest a few years ago was tens of thousands of dollars, if that much. Do you happen to know, just for comparison, compared to the 900,000?
Well,
What it was
in
previous years?
21, 22, there was a significant loss. Because our rates went down and we were still dealing with COVID. Interest rates were very, very low. But they started to rebound. So this 23, 24 year, this 2024 year is significantly higher. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it is significantly higher from the previous fiscal year or calendar years, I should say. So moving our funds into Schwab was a good call.
Hey, Tony, a question. I had a hard time following the paragraph on net earnings. So net earnings from Schwab, 852. Net earnings for fiscal year 24-25, 474.
That's 6 months.
So it's only,
That's from,
it's
it's only from July through December.
okay.
Yeah, so the
Alright.
first was calendar year, January through December. And then, but July through December is actually the first 6 months of the fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the 474, 642 is actually the earnings from Schwab.
Got it.
So yeah,
All
so
right,
it's
that's all.
460.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Tony, I have a question or comment, I guess, about Paula's report on, page 35. It's called there's a lot of, abbreviations, but it shows that, I think, it's a general fund share, by city,
Yes,
where we get 3.82%.
yes.
At one time, I thought Mark, who's not here, was trying to increase
Mhm.
that amount, and I don't know what the status is and whether we should be using someone like Paula to help us. And I don't, if that even is worth the effort. I just don't have a sense of.
Okay,
Um,
so we do receive 7%.
Oh, okay.
Of the total assessed value, and it's
Okay.
our secured and unsecured. And at our next meeting, I'll provide the letter that we received from the assessor that shows what the total assessed value is and what our, because we are on the teeter plan, so we will get, but the amount that we are going to be receiving based from the county is 7% of our total assessed valuation. That's broken down between our secured property tax, our unsecured property tax, and then the Prop 8 reduction. But we do receive 7%.
But to the point, are we even trying, or is it worth trying to get that number? I know we talked about it maybe 6 months ago.
Right.
I don't know if anything's happened or whether Paula thinks it's worth the effort or,
Well, we are receiving 7%,
oh, I see
which
you're
is,
saying.
which is the minimum.
How does that 7% compare? Like if this table were apples to apples, would we be up 4 or 5 spaces here, or does everybody get more?
Well,
than-
this chart does not include what we get in our T allocation. And that makes up the difference, our T allocation, tax, yeah, TEA. Yeah, so T.
So
Our tax equity allocation. That's how the county reports it to Paula. I've tried to have these conversations with Paula as well. And it's, she's requested how they do their calculations. They have not given how they do it. All I know is that when we get our assessed valuation letter, it shows 7% of the assessed value.
Okay, so I had a series of questions. I didn't realize we were getting 7%. Because I seem to bring up the TEA issue every time we discuss this subject. I'm glad we're getting 7%. I didn't realize that. But why is it that the other 3 TEA cities in the county have different numbers than we do on page 55, that's 35? We're the low number here, 3.82, or the total says 3.82 versus Half Moon Bay, which has 5.49. And we go all the way up to Coma. They're up at 10.84. How can they be at 10.84 and be a TEA city and only get 7%? So I'm, there's something in this reporting that Paula is doing that I'm sure it's accurate because she's getting it from the county, but I don't understand it at all. It'd be useful to try and understand it.
Well, their general fund, it depends on what their total general fund is. I mean, they have other tax revenues that we don't have. So yeah, our numbers are going to be different. I mean, we only have property tax, sales tax, franchise fees, and UUT, whereas Colma generates sales tax revenue that we will never see. It's probably more than what we get in total general fund. And so, I mean, it's all going to depend on how these general fund revenues are broken down and what percentage is each entity's share.
So can you, reading the fine print here, it says, what we're looking at here on this chart is general fund ATI share of all non-SA TRAs within the agency, within the towns.
Mhm.
What does all that mean?
Well, TRA is the tax. It's how they break down each entity. And I'll have to get back to you on
Okay.
all the different nomenclature.
But to get back to the original question, do you feel like the 7% is our max or whatever? And
Less than minimum.
I'm sorry. So, I mean, has there been any discussion with her as to whether try and increase?
I believe Mark and Craig did have some initial conversations with the assessor's office. But I don't see if it's gone any further.
We did meet with somebody in the office, and we're making slow progress. But we didn't get it. It's like all this stuff. Yeah, seems like it's acronym after acronym and trying to pin them down the calculation like, well, it's not that, so it still seems crazy. So Mark and I are still working on it, but I don't have anything to report that's useful. Sorry.
I'm sorry, so it's still worth trying?
I mean, that was our sense. It was just worth making sure that we were getting our share. That was what Mark and our goal was. Right. So yeah, I think it's worth it. But I mean, not to sound too negative, but I've been sort of working with the county to try to get tax numbers from them for like 20 years. It's just it incredibly obscure. And I mean, maybe at some point I have to go to a supervisor to sort of push from the top down, because I have to say, coming from the bottom up, you can never seem to find somebody who actually knows the answer. It's like somebody who knows some part of it. And so it feels much more like the elephant and feeling different parts of the elephant. I mean, I'd say that's the way it feels right now.
Would it help to use someone like Paula? I'm just asking,
Good question. I don't know. I know when Paula gave us her presentation,
Yeah.
I think she was like, from the stuff she's seen, it seemed like we were getting what we were supposed to. But she was also saying, based on the numbers I'm given, rather than what Mark and I are trying to do is like, well, where do these numbers come from? Like, can you give me a formula that I could do that would get me roughly to these same numbers? And we have not succeeded in that process yet. Mark did some spreadsheets of trying to approximate this stuff. And I'm sorry he's not here because he could give you more details on that. But yeah, no, I think we continue to work on it, but I wouldn't hold out hope. I guess that's the other side of this. I mean, sorry. I mean, just, it's such a long-term thing.
Keep discussing this because we'll get into discussion, I think. If there are no more clarifying questions, let's hear from the public and then we'll get right back into discussing how we pin this down. Anyone out there in Zoom land with a question or comment on this agenda item? Okay, everyone's being unusually quiet today. So right into discussion then. The only time I ever understood taxes was immediately in the 10 minutes following Paula Cohn's presentation. She has that talent that I associate with great professors where you feel brilliant for a few minutes and then I walk out and I forget it all. Because it's so unbelievably complicated that she's the only one I've ever heard of who had it kind of hang together on why.
She's been doing it for decades.
Yeah, why what was happening to us was legal, inappropriate and what have you. But I can't help but think that, I mean, this isn't atomic physics. It's not intrinsically complicated. It's just that human beings in the legislature have made it that way. And it must be serving someone's interest, but there I'm just giving personal opinion. I think we have our next meeting tentatively scheduled for February 18th. And it would be great to hear from Mark on where he is on this, right? Because any little shift we can make in that would really be helpful.
yeah, it just seems to me that we, the town, pay the county tons of property taxes. Some of it comes back and then we send that money back to the county. It's this big, it's circular. And since the next topic is the contract, it seems like, okay, you want to increase the contract? Why don't you increase, anyway. To me, it's just.
No,
money-
that's right. The
Money
whole-
flowing in and out.
Yeah, and we'll get into this later, but it's often occurred to me as well, which is given the current sheriff changed how overhead is allocated and how they calculate costs for our contract, resulting in dramatic change. Well, I have to assume maybe part of that was based on the way the revenue was being provided to us as well. So if we're going to change one formula, why can't we change the other one too? Because we're already paying lots of money to the county. And if we weren't incorporated, presumably that money, some of it would go for sheriff's protection. as it does in unincorporated up the hill and Ladera and so on and so forth, but yet we're paying extra. And, is this really working the right way?
Hey, George, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, it's Karen Askey. I tried to raise my hand, but I didn't get it in time.
Okay.
Um, um, I know I sent an email to you and Ken, and this is about taxes, so I don't know if it's in the right spot, but some localities have a restaurant sales tax. And that would go directly back to the municipality. You know, there's all sorts of taxes, and I just wonder if, as we're looking at revenue generators, we should be looking at a restaurant sales tax like of 1% and have that go back to the town. Obviously, I don't know what, Zots and Parkside and Jalisco's Grill are generating, but I just wonder if it's worth looking at. And even if it's, a couple $100,000, every little bit counts. So just wanted to throw that out there. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that.
George, can I elaborate? on
please.
this? Yeah, so what Karen's referring to is a transaction and use tax. And it is an add-on sales tax, and yes, the whatever percentage we assign, that does come back to the town. Whereas if you look at just the regular sales tax, the California sales tax is 7.25%. We might get 11 cents on the total dollar that's raised from that 7.25%. But we also get some others back with our public safety cops and our public safety. The two public safety funds that we have are funded through the California sales tax rate. The other items are Measure A, Measure M, Measure W. Those come back to us in the forms for our transportation projects. Now, I don't know if the rules have changed, but before it was you could only add up to 2% on top of your sales tax rate. And that's district wide. So if the county does one, that also adds, it's not 2% for each individual agency. So we would have to see, if we wanted to add a transaction use tax, we'd have to see if there's any gap between what's already being assessed and what is allowable.
Question, would that require charter town status, or is that?
No, that's a
separate?
general, that's a general sales tax. So, but that would be November 2026.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
I don't know if this is a question or a discussion point, but wanted to ask Tony to tell us how he plans to use the extensive data in this kind of a report as he develops the upcoming budget. I know every year we look at each source of revenue. There's a process to estimate what the revenue might be the succeeding year, usually based on various assumptions.
Right.
I assume this report in some way provides more clarity or precision on that process, but it doesn't tell you what the number will be. But could you discuss that a little bit? What you want to do, what you want to pull out of this report to help you in preparing that budget estimate revenue side?
Right. So February 26th, I'll be bringing a mid-year budget. So this will be activity through December. It will incorporate every revenue and expense for every fund. Because part of our strategic plan based on council priorities was to educate community on town finances. So the 26th council meeting is going to be entirely about the town's finances, the budget. We'll walk through every aspect, what revenues are coming in the general fund, the other special revenue funds, why are they special revenue funds? And, but it's all going to lead up to the development of the 25-26 budget. But yes, there will be some more financial data in the report that has been lacking over the past few years.
And we'll be discussing that the week prior.
Yes,
At our meeting.
yes, I'll be bringing that back the meeting before. Yeah. other handout too.
I think we closed out of comment on this item. We're in discussion here.
Yeah, but it would be helpful, I think, to have Mark update us on what he thinks happening and what he thinks
Yeah.
in light of Paula's report.
Yeah, I agree. So let's make that an agenda item for the next meeting. Update from. You get assigned homework. But no, as Rick Taylor, Councilman Taylor was just telling us, we've been doing some work on it, so we should hear about it.
Could I ask a qualifying question? You, Tony, mentioned just a moment ago that the 7% TEA allocation is a minimum, not a maximum.
That's
So that makes me believe that there's some possibility of getting more than 7%.
Well, the way the code is, yeah, it's every agency is required minimum 7%, but it also depends upon the services the town provides. So if a town has a police and fire, then they receive a higher allocation. So they'll go up to 15, 16%. It just all depends upon what services the town provides and how much services are going to be required from the county on the
Right,
town
but-
as well.
But TEA were cities that did not provide police and whatnot, and so they were given a minimum of 7, even though the calculation may have been less than
Right,
that.
right.
So you're saying that even though you're a TEA city, you maintain the status as a TEA city, and if you add police, you can then get more money?
Yeah, but there'll be a negotiation with the county. And that means we'll have to get it from somewhere else. Someone else is gonna have to give up
Right.
that portion.
The zero-sum game.
Yeah.
But then you wouldn't be.
But it should come from the county, but I mean, it's just my own instinct or my own personal feeling.
Yeah, and I just got rid of a banner that was hiding hands, and I note that Councilmember Flynn has her hand up, so I'd like to hear from her.
Hi, yes. Just a really, really quick question for Tony. You mentioned that you're going to receive an assessed value letter from the county. Have you received that already? And just a side note, if you could speak directly into the microphone at all times, it would be really helpful for those of us on Zoom. So have you received that letter already, or are you still awaiting it?
No, we have received the letter.
So is there some reason you can't release that to the public, or at least to town council and finance committee?
I will be bringing it to the next council or next finance committee meeting.
Well,
But
that's
but
another month out, but
But
yeah.
some members of the finance committee have already received it as well.
And is there some reason you can't release that to town council members today?
There is no reason for me not to distribute it.
Great. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. More discussion from committee members on this matter before we go to the next item? Hearing nothing, we'll move to the next item, which I believe is the audit schedule.
Yeah.
And I think there's been some revisions, so let's hear from Tony.
Yeah, so 21-22 audit has commenced. It was supposed to start in fall, but we were delayed with revising the budgets and other personnel matters. It was all, they kind of delayed that process. So the auditors have commenced on the 21-22 audit. Barring any issues, we should receive a draft next month. And then depending on if we want the finance committee to review it, like we did with the 2021 audit, then we should hopefully have acceptance in March. However, if anything should come up during their review that pushes it back, then it is what it is. And then for 22-23 and 23-24, the auditors have blocked out March through August to get those 2 fiscal years done. And then 24-25, we're going to have to revisit with them because starting in August is when they start doing their regular scheduled clients. So we're going to have to figure out a way to get shoehorned into for the 24-25 audit. I've also included a breakdown of the findings from the memorandum of internal control. There were 7 findings. These will continue to be findings for 2021, 21, 22, and 22, 23. And we have cleared up four of the 7 in 23, 24. And then we'll have most of all of the findings cleared up in 24, 25. Now, this also doesn't take into account that they may find additional findings as they continue their review from each year. But those are the existing findings, and that's the schedule of where we are in regards to clearing these items up. And I will update with each successive audit this table. But that's the current audit schedule, subject to change depending on if there are any additional issues in the review of the 21, 22 audit.
Tony, let me ask you about one of them that I'm most familiar with, just so I understand what clearing up means. The finding about being out of compliance with our investment policy. I think the finding there specifically said that there wasn't evidence that we had formally
Adopted.
reviewed and approved
Mhm.
the investment policy each year. That was the
Correct.
only
That was the only
finding in
issue with that
area.
one, yes.
And that wasn't done for 3 fiscal years, but I think we did do that the last 2 fiscal years as part of this discussion of enhancing the cash management and so forth. So that's how that got to where it is. correct?
Right, so annually we designate the town manager as the town treasurer. And including in that process is the investment policy. So the council reviews it and adopts it annually. So that was the finding, was that there wasn't a formal review of the investment policy.
And is it your understanding that the formal approval of the investment policy is something that has or must come before the finance committee or the council or not?
If we were going to make any changes to the investment policy, then yes, I would recommend that the finance committee go over that and look at and take their recommendations and actually review it. And then we bring it back to council saying that the finance committee has reviewed and approved this draft of the investment policy.
Okay. Are you anticipating any recommended changes to the policy for the next fiscal year?
Not for the next fiscal year.
Okay, thanks.
Also, a quick question. Did the delay in any way increase the fees or costs of the audits? Or is that in line with? our
Still in line.
expectation? Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then I'm sorry, I don't understand the red and the green and the yes and the no's. The ends are green and the Ys are red.
Right, so green is good, red is bad,
Okay, just out of curiosity, why is there an N in the greens?
because it's no longer a finding.
And you estimate the next audit, we'll have a draft next month. Will we be able to look at that ahead of the 18th, the meeting on the 18th?
If I have it.
Okay.
If I don't have it, then it'll,
Sure. And do we have the probability on whether you'll have it or not sure? yet?
at this time I don't.
Okay, good. Any more questions about audit schedule before I open it to public comment? Public comment. Anybody want to put your hand up? Yes, I see Councilmember Flynn.
Sorry, I'm still personally unclear on the table with the red and green. I get that the green means that the auditors have not found problems, and the red means that they have found problems that have not been resolved. So what I don't understand is, do we need to move forward with something at the finance committee or the town council level to resolve all those red boxes?
Not at this time. This is part of
Okay.
this is part of the process. This is part of the reason why I was hired. It was to also begin to implement the recommendations from Christian Company. We are currently in the process of doing that. The reason that, we're still findings in 21, 22, 22, 23 is those audits haven't yet to be completed and no implementations were not, those implementations were not implemented at that time because Christian Company didn't start until 23, 24.
But you are anticipating that once the audits are completed, then there will be steps that the finance committee and the town council will need to follow in order to clear all of those. Is that my
Mhm.
understanding?
No, we are clearing them administratively as
Okay,
part of our processes and procedures within the finance department.
okay, great. Thank you for clarifying.
Any other questions or comments from the public? Yeah, I don't see any hands, so discussion here for the committee. I can ask another question, Tony. How confident are our accountants and you in the new revised schedule? It's good that we'll have another one out of the way, hopefully in a month, but I'm just trying to see that we can wrap all this up this year.
I'm about 75%. There's still a couple items that need to be cleared up, and we're relying on other parties to provide that information, so.
Okay.
But we have a trial balance, we have numbers. I'm confident in the numbers, but again, it's part of their review. Are they going to be satisfied with clearing that item? So.
Right. Okay, and a lot of these internal control issues and journal entry kind of errors have all been fixed.
Yes, yeah,
And-
because we have additional staff who, you know, it's not one person's doing everything, which was the issue in those 3 fiscal years. Is we had 2 people pretty much doing everything.
Okay. So in a month, we should have another one. And then we in August, the next, and then we should be.
Well, March through, we should clear up 2 between March and August.
Okay.
So we should be through 23, 24 by August. And then that just leaves 24, 25. So we will be technically on schedule.
Yep.
For 24, 25, but we're not going to be in the queue for their regular audits that they do with their regular client. Well, we are regular client, but we have extenuating circumstances.
So we'll
but-
be a little bit late,
We'll be a little bit late with 24, 25.
but we will be caught up.
We'll be caught up,
Yeah,
yes.
all right, by summer vacation, hopefully. Okay, great. And more confident than that.
And again, we are doing something that's never been done before. So it is a Herculean task.
Okay,
I'd just like to point out and thank and comment that this schedule, despite the problems that may have occurred in the last couple of months, is actually the same schedule that you provided us back in November, according to our minutes. That said that we'd have completion of 22 by April of this year
Right.
and of 23 by June of this year.
Mhm.
And that 24 would occur in September. So the
Right.
numbers you're giving us
That was a
today,
revised schedule.
well, and that's still the
November.
schedule,
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that's good that things haven't changed.
okay, good. Well, this is good progress. We're getting there, slowly but surely. Any more discussion on the audit issue? All right, we'll proceed to item C, something that's near and dear to my heart, the sheriff's contract negotiation status. And again, Tony, maybe you can just tell us where we are with respect to that.
Yes, a couple months ago, Mayor Wernicott and interim town manager Corey and myself met with the sheriff and her staff, and we were discussing, the contract, and there were some back and forth, and we were going to follow up with them. But then the following week was the release of the report by the county supervisors and kind of put everything in limbo. We've been in conversations with some of the other cities that have a contract with the sheriff, and pending the resolution of what happens in March, if there is an election or not, or if she's ousted or not, then the other cities are willing to step back in and kind of negotiate as a block with with the sheriff department to see what we can do about keeping the costs under control. But right now, the status is in limbo, pending the outcome of.
And
Mark.
the first conversation, how did that go with?
They seemed open. There were a couple asks that we had. The first one was the timing of the payments. We wanted to keep our payments in line with our property tax distribution, just for cash flow purposes. There was no objection to that. When we talked about reductions, they didn't walk out of the room. So they seemed open. So I mean, for all intents and purposes, it was a good meeting. We also discussed, putting the sheriff's substation in our front conference room instead of where it currently is at the moment. They seemed amenable to that. So in all, I thought it was a very good conversation, very good discussion. But the week after, everything just kind of went sideways.
Yeah, my impression is the election is to give the Board of Supervisors the ability to do something, and it's unclear they'll do something that quickly, right?
Well, yeah, my understanding is that it's granting the board temporary powers to remove the sheriff, and it's between March and June, is my understanding. But then there's also, you could also do a recall as well. I think the Mercury News had a editorial over the weekend saying that, don't vote for this ballot measure. We should do the recall, do a recall. So, I mean, it's.
But doesn't the ballot measure amount to a recall effectively, given the county commissioners?
Well, it's
are
given
on-
it's given the county
Yeah,
the power to remove the sheriff who's an elected official.
yeah, and they already, though voted that tell her she should resign. So
Right.
one would imagine if they have the power, then they'll remove her, and that's effectively. a
Right,
recall.
but prior to this ballot measure, the only other way to remove the sheriff
Mhm.
is through the recall.
Right, right. Okay.
Yeah, so we could still have a delay, I mean, after March.
Right,
Yeah.
the thing is, I mean, it's too late to do a recall to get to get it qualified for the March ballot. I mean, if they were to do a recall, then it would be the next election after that.
Who are the other cities and how does it work if we're coordinating with
I know
other?
it's Half Moon Bay, Woodside, I don't want it, yeah, Millbray's one, but she came out of Millbray. I believe there's 4 or 5 other cities that I'm just blanking on who they are right now.
And how does that work? We coordinate with them and then go in as a united front. And so we have to negotiate with a bunch of other cities to get what we need.
Well, we all want the same thing. So it'll be, but instead of, we'll just be as a block, negotiating with sheriff. But all that stuff still needs to be figured out.
Plus, isn't the sheriff suing the county for like 10 million? or
He's suing the
something?
county for 10
So I
million,
hope that
and she's
doesn't-
also trying to have the ballot measure stopped.
I hope that 10 million isn't something we end up paying too.
Do you have any understanding of why a recall wasn't pursued by the county to start with?
I think it was the timing.
Oh, okay.
They like, to get it all on the ballot measure, there's no way they'd have gathered the signatures in time.
Okay, so this was a way to effectively have
Yeah.
a recall without having to do the signature gathering.
This was the council exercising their authority. Or the board, excuse me.
Clarifying questions before I ask the public? And then we can discuss this. Okay, I see a hand. It's a phone number ending in 7562. Go ahead, tell us who you are.
Good afternoon, Caroline Vertongen. I happen to be a member of the Bike, Pedestrian, and Traffic Safety Committee. So I was wondering if, because in the past, the Finance Committee asked to be in contact with PPTS, which I recommend, especially because 2 of our members, and I'm talking about Kevin Wells, who is actually the commissioner sheriff's commissioner for Portola Valley. And then Ed Holland, the chair of PPTS, is the assistant commissioner. So I was hoping, I'm not sure why town council did not meet with them as well, because they have been dealing with the sheriff for many years. And perhaps I can recommend that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have Rita Combs. Go right ahead. Rita, you're on mute.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Sure can.
Okay, well, my question is, it's a question that's been brought up a few times. Have we looked into other options? Like while we're waiting, it was some time ago that Tony and others had met with the sheriff's department. But are we looking into any other options? Because we don't want to wait until March or April and then find out we have nothing except a very large bill. I hope that we can spend some time, or even if we have to just gather people from the community to look into other options, so that we're not just left literally holding the bag and possibly, because of a $10 million settlement, having to pay more money to cover things. Thank you.
Thanks, Rita. And Karen Askey.
Hi, thank you. This is a question for Tony. You mentioned that you talked about moving them out of the substation. And I'm just wondering if there was any timing discussed of that, because I'm on another committee where we've discussed whether there could be housing over there. So I'm just more interested in if there was any more detail on the substation conversation.
The conversation was very preliminary. We just told them this part of the front of the conference room. And then there was further discussion about, well, we'll have to have their IT department to come out to see if we can still have the connectivity, because that is our emergency operations center as well. But there were no deadlines, no further discussion than that. Like I guess, as I said, the week after this meeting was when the county released that report, and pretty much the person that we were talking to was very key in that report, and his status with the county is currently up in the air.
Okay, thank you.
And can I also answer Rita's question?
Yeah, please do.
Yes, other opportunities are being considered. However, we are still under contract with the San Mateo County Sheriff. Breaking that contract would be a cost concern as well.
Other comments from the public before we go to discussion here for the panel? I don't see anybody else, so let's discuss this. I'll kick it off with just this is very interesting situation, right, with the sheriff. If you're thinking about negotiating posture, we don't know who we're negotiating with.
Correct.
So on the one hand, let's assume she survives, in which case you've started a dialogue, and we want to keep that professional and polite and try to figure out how we can move things. And I would hazard that the argument there would be that the property tax formula should change if they're changing our expense formula. You made the point earlier that towns that fund their own police force and have other expenses that are higher than others get more property tax to pay for that. Well, we had a longstanding formula with the sheriff that they changed on the expense side that increased our obligations without the corresponding shift in property. So that's where I'd go on that. If she doesn't survive, well, that's a potential for a full reset, right?
Right.
Because whether or not she was responsible for any of this herself, the tendency is you blame the old person who left for anything that you don't like, and then everyone can be friends and start over. So yeah. Either way, though, I think we've got possibilities here.
Yeah, another town, San Carlos, is another town. They did, as a council, passed a vote of no confidence. But then again, if she does survive, and
Oh,
have
the town council passed a no confidence
passed a
in the sheriff?
resolution of no confidence.
Oh, well, as the county did. And those
Yeah.
are the two now so far?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, I don't think it's politic to take a view
Right.
either way. Every voter should figure out how they want to evaluate that one and read the reports and
Yeah.
make up your mind. But I'm just thinking for our town's benefit, what are the gaming out the scenarios of what happens and how we can best come up with a fair result for our town?
Correct. Yeah, there are certain elements that came out in that report that, because the chief of staff salary increased three times within a year. Some of the leases that they had done. So, I mean, there's room there for some identifiable options that, some of these costs don't necessarily have to be passed down to.
Yeah, exactly. Like they were paying property tax on their leases.
Right, so the leases include property tax, yet they're a government agency. And so the property's owners can claim, the county can give them exemption on property tax.
Right, right.
Based on the percentage of the building that's being used by
Yeah.
nonprofit, education.
Yeah, and that
government.
certainly shouldn't be in our overhead because in any event, the money is going back to them anyway.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I don't remember this from previous years when we talked about it, but, one side is the contract negotiation for what's the price, for what service level, and the other issue from our side is, did we get, and are we getting the service we
Mhm.
thought we should get and was contracted for? And I think in the past, we've gotten some help from our traffic and safety committee, which kind of keeps keeps the pulse of
Right.
number of calls and how they responded, and number of tickets written and that type of thing. Do you have any information under this current time period of how well the contract is being executed?
I have not seen that, but as I'm going through the budget process, I will be talking with every committee. And obviously, one of the conversations is going to be, okay, you spent your money, what did we get for that? And so hopefully we can have very substantive conversations with each committee. Specifically in regards to the sheriff's contract, we can have that conversation with the traffic safety.
Yeah, I
committee.
remember specifically, there were some issues with response time
Mhm.
in more than a handful of
Yeah.
cases. It was considered an issue.
Right, but I have not seen like a report from the sheriff on a number of incident calls, response time, or anything like that, but
Okay.
So you mentioned we're under contract, so when does that officially end right now?
I believe it's through 25, 26.
Another year?
Yeah,
Year and a half?
because we do have another $212,000 credit from the county towards that contract.
So we have the credit, but you're not sure of the amount.
It was a small increase from this year, but it's, like I said, we're getting, and then this will be the last year of credit from the county, and it's 212,000.
When you prepared this schedule, I think for the last meeting, you were on the contract amount, you were estimating a 10% increase?
Yeah, it wasn't 10%. It was below that.
I'm sorry. Oh,
The
so we
actual amount
actually-
was below, yeah.
Oh, so we actually know that amount now?
Yeah.
And what percentage was it?
I believe it was 2 or 3%.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so
Yeah, it was
that's,
better, yeah.
okay, so not, and
But
so,
it's still $1 million more than,
yeah, but, I'm sorry, so as of now, we have firm numbers through 25, 26.
Mhm.
And these are all fiscal years, right?
Right,
Not calendar
yeah.
years?
yes.
Yeah. Oh, puts us right into our next election.
Yeah.
November.
So just to clarify that, so I was under the impression that the contract that we're currently in does expire this coming summer. It doesn't. It's another year and a half.
Yes. Well, it renews, and we had to let them know before the end of December that we're,
Okay, so at the end of December, we committed to 25, 26.
Yeah.
Okay.
And presumably we'll have to keep doing that like a year in advance.
that's the way the contracts are worded.
Yeah, because they have to plan.
Yeah.
What they're covering.
Yeah, so hopefully by December, we'll know, one, the outcome of the election, whether there's a new sheriff or not and all that. Because it's now 11 months away. you're
Right.
saying.
And then we'll also be caught up with our financial stuff, so we can keep a better tack on it.
back to the service delivery component, is it, does it seem the case for town staffers that the sheriff, drama at the top, is that affecting service delivery of actual deputies doing law enforcement or not?
No, I mean, we're still seeing the deputies coming through. In fact, I saw she was walking the canine
Okay,
today. So,
Great.
So there is a presence, but they, like I said, they kind of like the front
mm-hmm,
location because they think it gives us a greater presence.
yep,
If you're using the fields, if you're using the library, if you're using town hall, you'll see the sheriff's deputy vehicle there.
that's good.
So we were, like I said, they were very amenable to that location.
Okay, good. I'm glad the drama at the top isn't.
Yeah, no, it doesn't seem to be I don't see, stern faces. I think it's more the undersheriffs, the captains, the command level, because they've also had, their votes of no confidence as well.
Right.
So.
Okay. So summarizing for me, it looks like we've got some opportunity and we'll have to see how this quasi recall election shakes out in March. And that'll determine which way the negotiations go. Any more on that? Oh, we're making unusually fast progress today.
Yes.
Which I like. So we will proceed to the final item.
There's a handout.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where? Oh, yeah, I think that's legacy from before. Karen, do you have anything new to add or is that from last time?
Oh, I'm
Sure.
sorry. I forgot to lower my hand.
Yeah, no trouble. Okay. Great, we'll move to the next item. Next item is budget development calendar. And we'll hear from Tony on this. This is, of course, near and dear to our hearts as well. Since we dealt with the immediate crisis that we were facing last year.
Right.
And stabilized things. And now we're moving towards something more sustainable, getting our house in order with audits. And what's the schedule on developing the next budget?
Looking at, by the end of this week, we'll have all the budget worksheets for departments and committees ready. First week of February, we'll distribute those budget worksheets and schedule meetings to review. Hopefully by the end of February to have all those compiled. And then in March, the council is meeting with priorities and strategies. And then I have March 19th for a budget study session. May not necessarily fall on a regularly scheduled council meeting. It could be a special meeting. So we'll see what everybody's schedule is like. But that's kind of a preliminary review of all the raw data of what we've collected so far. And then in April, I'm looking to do a budget roadshow. And the topic will be on all the revenues that the town receives. Again, this is part of educating the town on its finances, where the money comes from, how it's being spent. And then in May, we're looking to adopt the fee schedule and then have any direction on CIP, which is our capital improvement plan. A note on the fee schedule, we are currently under a fee study. However, we have to adopt a fee schedule before the fiscal year. We probably will not be done with the fee study by then, so we're just going to roll over the current fee schedule, add in the CPI kickers, and then have that in place for July 1st. And then when we have the fee study done, then we'll revise the fee schedule depending on what the outcome of the study is.
Can that be revised mid-year or do you have to
Yeah,
wait?
we can revise it mid-year as long as we have that study done. Got it. And then in May, looking at another budget roadshow, going over the expenses. And then the end of May, have another budget study session. And then have adoption of the count of the budget by June 12th. And that's kind of a rough draft of the budget calendar, 25-26. And I've also included the town council priorities that were adopted last year in regards to fiscal responsibility and long-term viability. First task was to prepare a staffing plan for the finance department to include hiring a finance director. happy to report that's been completed. And then the other items were, and these are all still in development, articulated plan for finances and a financial management structure in town, educate the community on the town finances, implement the recommendations from the Christian Company report, complete the audits, professionalize financial controls, provide regular financial reports to town council, and develop and implement the necessary infrastructure to efficiently process and collect fees. As I said, those are still all currently in development. We've made significant progress in most of these. They're just not fully implemented. But moving forward, looking into next year for 25, 26 and long-term, looking at paring down some of these strategies and maybe looking at some other ideas that the town should look at from a financial perspective. Looking for finance committee input on this. And this is something that we can put on the agenda for the next finance committee meeting. That way you guys can have some time to kind of digest this. I'm not looking for answers tonight, but give us some idea so that when we go to council in March, we can say, well, the finance committee recommends that we include these as town priorities and strategy. And then the other items are fiscal responsibility, long-term viability, safety, responsible land use, organizational efficiency and effectiveness, and environmental sustainability. So this, all the departments are currently reviewing this item for the council meeting in March. But for our direction, our focus, just the fiscal responsibility and long-term viability. So if you wanted to pursue revenue measures, you would put it in here. If you wanted to talk about charter town amendment, may not necessarily be a financial component, but it is a long-term plan for the town. But I mean, I know we have a direction from our revised budget that the charter town amendment was something to look into. But with this process, we can actually formally codify it, if this is actually what the town's going to pursue. And there's going to be a short term because we have an interim town manager, but then hopefully a permanent town manager in the not too distant future.
Do you have the capability now to see how we're running against, we're 6 months into the current year. Do you have a good way now to,
This close.
you're close to being able to see how we're doing against that budget?
Yes, we're very, very close.
So is that something we're going to have on the next meeting in February?
Yes.
Okay. One question I had right away, I'd like to know, or I'd like to presume that the town doesn't receive any either state or federal grants that might be affected, if not in the current year and the next one. I don't think what was announced at the federal level today probably would have anything to do with us, although I'm more worried about what might happen at the state level, given the
Right. So
wildfires.
right now with our streets report, since we're 3 years behind, that I said about 200,000. That number is actually 254,000. 23-24 is going to be submitted within the next week. And once that is accepted, then the 254,000 will be released to us, and that's gas tax money. But we're still also receiving Measure A, Measure M, Measure W. We don't have any grants at the moment for transportation. We have one we're clearing up from 22-23. Oh, no, I'm sorry, from 23-24. But if we are awarded another grant, we're also going to have to determine if there is a matching component. That's going to come out of the general fund, and we're going to have a conversation about that. But as far as our transportation money, that's not being impacted because it's the funding sources are either a sales tax measure, or it's gas tax, or it's vehicle license fees or SB1 fees. But like I said, the only one that's being held up right now is our gas tax money as a result of the being behind the street report.
But the gas tax is from the state?
That's from the state.
Okay, so not, you're saying in light of recent federal dictates, we're not impacted.
Yeah, we currently aren't receiving any, or we're not waiting for any federal money. Because I know he issued an executive order stopping all disbursements, but yeah, with that, we're not being impacted by that.
Where do things stand with the lease back? Did we shelve that? Did the town council decide against moving forward with any further review?
We're not, it's a placeholder right now. We're not doing anything active towards it, but it's still out there as an option.
Just off the top of your head, do you have a sense for the amount of change in the sheriff's contract, either with more revenue on property tax or reduced expense that would fill our structural hole? Would a significant change there be sufficient by itself, or are we still facing long-term issues?
Well, I mean, if, it depends on where we want our reserves to be. That's gonna have a direct impact on, the revenue that we're going to need. And depending on which revenue measure comes in. But yeah, we're gonna need at least $1 million, at least. Just so that we can start building our reserves back up. But again, is that a priority? Is that, are we okay with being at 2 million? Are we okay? Or do we want to go back up? So that, again, that's all part of the conversation that we're gonna have with this budget.
Right. Okay. So we'll know more in a month. Okay.
So can I ask a couple questions here? You said that we kind of shelved for the least the time being, the lease back option, which is a loan basically from the county.
Yeah, we did not receive direction from council to pursue that, but we didn't, I mean, it's still out there, but it just,
So has council given you direction as to whether or not this budget that you're planning to prepare in the next 6 months to be even? Or are we supposed to have expenses matching revenues, anticipated revenues? Or is it okay to provide more services and borrow the money? Have they given direction on that? And if not, how can you possibly develop a budget?
I have to develop a budget on what the town needs.
What they
and
need
What they
may be
need.
different than what they can afford.
Exactly. So, but obviously, we're gonna have to have conversations as we have 14 full-time staff. Having 14 full-time staff, and if you look at planning and building, they have X amount of duties, but in order to perform these X amount of duties, they need to have 5 people doing it. And if we only have 3. So we're only having 3 means these 5 items, okay, it's going to be 2 months for this item, or it's going to be 3 months for this item. So there's going to be a balancing act of what the town needs, what the town wants, and what we can actually afford. But I have to give the full picture, and then we pare down from that. But we have direction for this year as a balanced budget. But yeah, so I'm going to have, here's what we need, here's how much we can afford. So for it to be balanced, then we need to cut all this up.
When you say what we need, that's why I'm having difficulty understand. The services that we provide what do you think
Are not enough
today, but they were enough in the past.
I don't know.
So isn't the town council supposed to set direction as to what
Right, but I have to
services
give,
we need?
I have to give the full picture to council
The full picture of
this is what the town needs. So we need to have 5 people in building and planning as an example. We need to have 4 people in public works. We're okay in finance. And so I may come back and say, we need to have 18 or 19 people on payroll in order to provide these services. We only have 14. Can we afford 18 based on our current revenue and our other expenses and our supplies and services? Probably not. But I have to produce the whole picture of it's just like any budget at your house. I need to do this, I need to do this, but I can only afford to do this. But I still need to know I have an obligation here. For example, our storm drains. We don't have a storm drain master plan. We don't have a wildfire master We haven't done a pavement condition index. We have a software that measures it. And we can identify areas that are weak, but we don't have a master plan on our streets, where to target this money. And these things all cost. And so these are going to be, here's our wish list of things that we need to cover. There's going to be items that the council's going to give us direction. Okay, pursue this, pursue. So we may come in and say, okay, you can go $100,000 over. However, that doesn't solve the issue of our reserve. So I have to produce the whole picture, and then council can decide, because that's the only way I can be fair to council is, you need to tell me what to cut out, but this is everything that I've identified the town needs. You understand?
I guess you're saying, rather than getting direction from the council, you're saying that the town staff and you can decide what the definition of needed services are.
Based on the conversations we're gonna have with the departments and with committees, and, there's gonna be items that they're gonna identify. And they could be long-term plans, or they could be short-term plans, or they could be midterm plans. But I have to bring the whole picture to council.
But why don't we discuss this after we hear from the public?
I thought we were in discussion.
No, it was a clarifying question, but I want to hear from the public, and then let's wrap this around. 'Cause I
Fine.
really want to hear more of this, but I don't want to cut off people. And I think Rita has her hand up. So Rita, why don't you kick it off?
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, well, thank you for taking my comment. And so, Tony, I really appreciate you talking about some of the things that the town actually needs, because currently we do not have a safety plan. We don't have an infrastructure plan. We don't have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, but all of that needs to happen. And it's really important, especially in light of what happened down in LA. And we seem to be just planning 7 months ahead, 8 months ahead with our finances. And there has to be something bigger happening. And that's my first thing. Is there a plan for, my first question, is there a plan for a 5-year, 10-year, 15 plan for our finances based on these infrastructure issues that we have and the safety plan issues? And my second question is, at the last couple of warrant lists, there was such an outrageous amount of money paid to Good City. And what we don't see is, someone said, oh, we get some of that money back. We as residents don't see what money comes back or where it's being allocated based on which projects and stuff. You can watch a meeting and you can see how many contractors are in the meeting, including our contractor attorney. And you can say, oh my gosh, that town planning meeting is costing $9,000 to $12,000 just for that one meeting that night. But we don't see what money we get back from Good City or anyone else. And if that was promised to us in the past when they were using that .gov software, but of course we could never find that information, it would be really helpful before a budget is done to actually see what money we're getting back. And I'm not saying this is trying to suggest any kind of micromanagement, but we just want to see, because we have not seen that. We've been promised that information, but have not seen that information ever. But thank you very much for taking my comment.
Can
Thank you, Rita.
I answer?
Oh, please.
Rita, you will see that February 26th.
I'll be
Excellent.
looking.
Good stuff. Love the responsiveness. Anyone else there? Back to discussion. Ken, you were in mid comment, and Chris, we want to hear from you too. You've been quiet, but you can open your mic anytime.
So what I was concerned about is that one of the priorities in this list of priorities
Mhm.
Under organizational efficiency and effectiveness, the first one is fill vacancies. And I think we all know that if we fill vacancies, that we go into deficit. But as we would this year, and I can't imagine it being that much different next year. So if this is what the town council is saying to do, fill vacancies, then you need some additional revenue to pay them.
Also, remember, these priorities were being developed when everybody thought we had 5 million in reserves.
This hasn't been updated in the last 6 months?
This has not been updated.
And you were using this?
We're in the process of updating it so that the council gives us direction in March.
Okay. All right, so we're looking forward to something from the council that
Right, but-
allows us to have a productive
But
budgeting
in
process.
regards to vacancies in our recruiting processes, we're striking out. We're competing with other cities, higher salaries, better benefits. And this is going to be our third attempt at filling the town engineer position. And we have one candidate from Bakersfield. So yeah, we're striking out.
That's a long commute.
Longer than mine. He'll take the record.
It might be flies. Quite like-
Yeah, so
So-
it's right now, the challenge to fill those positions on our recruiting is, it's a challenge.
Well, it's a challenge to pay them all as well, as it turns out,
Mhm.
given our finances. So I want to go back to something that I think it was Rita actually just mentioned, and that's the 5-year plan that I keep bringing up every other meeting. It seems to me that we need a 5-year plan almost as rapidly as we need a 1-year budget.
Mhm.
Because if we still are $1 million short structurally, we need to do something about that, and we only have another year and a half.
Right.
To
So-
get that all together.
Right, so the fiscal forecast model that I presented, it does go 5 years out. So that's financially, but I mean, there's still other non-financial items that we need to have a plan for as well. I mean, the financial component is actually paying for it, but it's, each department has needs that need to be identified and written down and have a plan and prioritize. And that's something that this town has not done in years. And it needs to be done. So I'm starting that process for 25, 26.
So when do you think a 5-year plan seems reasonable to set to have a 5-year plan? What time frame do you see, both from the workload
Mhm.
perspective and the other things you need to do, as well as an election possibility in November of 2026?
I mean, it could take 2 budget cycles. Probably at least 2 budget cycles. But if we start the work now and start identifying what needs to be included in the plan and get everybody on board, then we can have the momentum going forward to where we actually have, here's the 5-year plan that council has adopted that everybody buys in on. But that's going to take some legwork and it's going to take some time. But I'm committed to going down that process. But I would say at least 2 budget cycles.
So that would mean kind of June of 26.
Yep.
And in order to have an election in November, don't you have to put it on the ballot by August?
Yep.
So we're thinking June,
This-
July, 2 months before it needs to be on the ballot, that we get the information?
Well, if we get council direction this year to pursue a revenue measure for November 2026, we can start the education process now. And by the time we do the 25, 26 budget, it's going to be codified. We're going to pursue a revenue measure for November 2026. So part of the plan would be by June of 2026, we're going to ask for these revenue measures to be put on the ballot in November.
So if there's a revenue measure on the ballot in 26,
Mhm.
it seems to me that the budgeting process that we do now in definition of our services that we wish to provide, our quote needs, needs to be well thought out, because if you are asking the residents to tax themselves,
Right.
They better believe that we actually need the funds, and that would all of a sudden or changing things that we've done for the last decade or two. All of a sudden now we need to do them doubly or whatever. And if they feel we're gold plating everything, they're not likely to vote for it. So it seems to me there's a lot of process here that needs to be addressed fairly soon.
And that's part of what's driving what's going to be the budget calendar. So those budget roadshows that I'm talking about with revenues and expenses, those are going to be ample opportunities to have those conversations with the residents of the town, with staff, with council. And because we got to put everything on the table. And we have to have a conversation, just what is the town willing to do? And is the town okay with having 14 residents and having all the other services being provided by consultants? If we don't want to use consultants, then that means we have to hire more staff
Or provide less services.
or provide less services or pursue other cost-saving measures for shared services.
Are we, as we're factoring that in, particularly in the main service component I can think of, which is the building department,
Mhm.
are we factoring in the forecast of all the additional housing projects that are being sort of required by the state?
Well, we've identified them, but what we don't have right now is timelines.
Yeah.
So we need to refine that. Also, we just don't have the
Yeah.
timelines for those projects.
Yeah, there's
yet.
just a whole, lot of dependencies on this too that are financially.
Right.
Like if you put in higher density housing developments, then the roads will become more crowded.
Mhm.
So you need electric service, water service, sewer service, and a way out of here, as the LA fires have just demonstrated, which has always worried us. And the more people you add, the more critical that becomes.
Right.
And those are expensive.
Mhm. Yeah.
Anyway, it's a very complicated set of dependencies to figure out how do you accommodate all of these various requirements where, the sheriff wants to get paid more, the state wants to see more housing built.
Right.
We need to have a safe town so that we don't endanger people here, and all the infrastructure, nobody has factored in. It's not like someone's providing us a grant to widen the roads. Or
Yeah.
anything.
I mean, some of our revenue has not kept pace with the inflation of the COVID years and and some of our policies and procedures haven't been updated since 2018. So, I mean, there's a lot of areas that we need to address and, it's staffing resources, and it's not necessarily staffing resources, it's staff bandwidth. Just how much they can take on.
Right.
And get it done and continue. And, not having additional resources there does hinder the effort.
Okay, well, this is going to be very important for town council to sort out, as you say, here's the priority rank order, right?
Mhm.
So that where.
Well,
we
no,
cut
the
off-
council determines the priority.
No, but-
Here's the issues.
Yeah, but that's
help
what I'm
us
saying.
define what we
Once
need
you
to
have
do,
the
yeah.
issues, then somebody presumably would set a rank order.
Right.
And then, well, we only have so much money for this.
Mhm.
And so either there's a revenue thing or this is where a cutoff is.
Yeah, no, but every step we're gonna take, it's gonna be based on council direction.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
But they.
Yeah,
need to-
hey, George, couple questions or comments for Tony. Can I interject?
Absolutely.
Hey, so Tony, on this budget calendar and council priorities update,
Mhm.
is this your proposal or is this the agreed upon schedule with council?
These were the agreed upon, the priorities were agreed upon by council.
No, I'm saying your schedule that says January 31st and is completed on June the 12th.
Yeah.
Is that your schedule or? is
That's
the
my
town-
schedule. That's my schedule. It's a draft.
Right, so what's it take to get town council to agree to this schedule?
Well, we can have that conversation on the 26th.
Okay, so look, I mean, listening to all the comments here, I mean, addressing the committee as well as Tony, this is what good finance directors do. They're the forcing function in getting the executives to make decisions. And so my assessment of your schedule is it's very good from a finance forcing function perspective. But if town council does not agree to the schedule, the schedule's kind of meaningless, no matter how hard you try, Tony, right? You know, is what I'm saying. So, so I guess I think Craig is in the room. To me, the most important action is to make certain that the town council adopts this schedule or something like this. So how's that get done? Crickets.
Yeah, if you could do, that'd be great. Thank you, Craig.
Hey, Chris, I'm happy to answer. I was just trying to stay out of the committee conversation.
Yeah.
So much of what Tony's already outlined is on what we call our roll forward.
Okay.
So what we try to do is we try to project out. So we've got meetings projected out to sort of beginning of April. Right now. So in that sense, and I'll make sure that we continue to work with Tony just to fill this stuff in. I mean, given that the finances are kind of the number one priority of the town, it's pretty hard for me to imagine that we're not going to work with Tony to make this schedule work.
Yeah, but I think the thing is Tony's going to do all the bottoms up work, right? And I mean, that's what a lot of this conversation has been. Tony's going to go out to each of the departments, say, what do you need? The departments are going to create their wish list, you know, set their priorities, give him dollars and cents expense needs. But town council has to set the priorities for the town and then, you know, and then trim some of those budget requests that come from each of the departments, right? This is kind of a normal iterative cycle. And I think Tony's laid out a good schedule to iterate multiple times. But I mean, this stuff has to, like, decisions are hard to make, but you have to have a schedule that says we're going to make this decision by this date, and that's it, right? And I think that's kind of what the comments have been here. People aren't clear on that. And like, we can't, as a finance committee, in my opinion, help until you have priorities and strategies set, right? So, and that comes from town council, not from Tony. So, look, so I think the point's made. I would say, this is a proposed schedule. My recommendation would be come up with an approved schedule. And in finance committee, we need to set our schedule in support of this schedule.
Yeah, and I think there's two, and I can add a little bit more. I know we're going to have a council meeting to discuss priorities through the end of June and priorities through the end of December. So we're going to take the current priority list that Tony mentioned. This is the thing that we did last year. And we're going to trim that down to what are the priorities? And this is particularly why Mark's here, Mark Linder, the new interim. You know, what do we want Mark to focus on basically through the end of June and through the end of December? So that's coming up. I'd have to look at my schedule, but that's coming soon. So that'll be the first thing, is to get that list of priorities sort of winnowed down and prioritized. And then I think you're asking a larger question about the schedule stuff. It sounds reasonable to me. I mean, like I said, I'll have to look at Tony's schedule and compare it against our roll forward, but I don't have any reason we can't put that in. And I think I'm also hearing from you is making sure we're scheduling in the consequences of Tony's schedule, if you will.
Yeah, no, you're right on, Craig. So I think that's just it, the reconciliation between the town council schedule and this. And look, maybe I'm just biased because I'm on finance committee, but there's nothing more important than getting this alignment between, you know, budget requests, revenue, and priorities. So.
Right, and I agree. And the only other thing I'd add is we say the town council, but there's another constituency, which is the public. So it's a set of public meetings that we will hear from the public. You know, because one of the questions, and we were getting at a little bit, is do we stay with a staff of 14? Do we basically say that town halls only open a certain number of hours per day? Or do we say, no, it's important it be open, you know, full business days? So that's going to be a combination of what the council hears from the public and then what the council believes is best for the town. So yeah, you're right. There's a lot of moving parts here, and we need to make sure that we get all these things aligned and move forward. But, you know, I really appreciate you guys because, you know, Tony's a forcing function. The finance committee is a forcing function. So we'll all work together to force the right answer, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
look, I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, it's just make decisions as soon as you can, don't postpone them. Because postponing decisions just puts us in more of a deficit, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't speak for the whole council, obviously, but it's certainly my personal opinion is that, you know, this year is the year we got to start moving on this stuff and laying the groundwork. The next year we have to execute. I mean, we have to have it all in place by the time we get to, you know, November. So, yeah, I don't think there's anybody in the council who doesn't see that that's sort of the larger picture for the next couple of years.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Craig. I guess, so to that end, Tony, one comment is, when I look at your proposed schedule, you say April is the budget roadshows around revenues.
Yeah.
I just think, look, we've got to calibrate everybody's expectations. The sooner you can show what forecasted revenues are going to be, you know, vis-a-vis prior years, right? Then that's like the biggest wake-up call, I think, for everyone, is to say, hey, if revenues are down, you know, guess what? In the near term, you cut services to match revenues. So my request would be, can you start the budget roadshows on revenues sooner?
Yeah, I'll take that into consideration.
All right, thanks. And one last question, it's a detail, but you said the fee schedule assessment is underway, but it
Yes.
will not be complete by June. So
No, they had proposed a 7-month schedule. So we will probably not have their analysis and report of findings and recommendations in time for the next fiscal year. We have to have a fee schedule in place. So we're just going to use the existing fee schedule, apply what we've applied in the past, and have that roll over for July 1st. And then when we have because there will be sticker shock. I mean, these fee studies always come with a sticker shock.
yeah, sure.
And it's usually, the plan is that, you know, the fee increases are implemented over a number of years and not all at once. So, and again, it'll be a council decision of just how much fee recovery are we going to accept? Are we going to accept 100%, 75%, 80%? It'll all be laid out in the report, and council will decide what the cost recovery is going to be. And then we'll implement the fee schedules moving forward with that.
You know, one person's opinion on this, the 7-month study on fee schedules is just way too slow. But, you know, if that's the RFP that we put out and we agree to, so
That's usually how it goes. I mean, this is my 3rd fee study, and it's been 6-7 months to have it done and then presented to council and then implemented.
yes, it's a little different when you're running out of money.
Yeah.
So, but
I understand.
Yeah.
And also just, you know, there's a couple of myths that I kind of want to clear up. Number one, we're not broke.
I
We got over $20 million sitting.
not in the general fund, we don't.
Yeah, well, the general fund, yeah, the reserve is lower than what it is, but
Yeah.
we're not broke.
Yeah, I don't look at that
And,
20 million.
and we're also not in debt. I mean,
We're
we
not in
have
debt,
no,
which is beautiful.
we have no debt. We have
Amen.
no debt service. We have no bond payments.
I agree. It's a
You know,
beautiful,
so I just want to clarify that. I mean, I just, you know, it
yeah,
kinda
it's just,
irks me.
but
It's a little bit irksome when I hear people say we're broke.
yeah,
and-
but Tony, we got to be careful about that 20 million, right? I mean, it's just, it's general fund money that's,
Right, the general
That's
fund,
forward
yeah, the
show.
reserve is below, it's what the target level is. But now is the time for us to, you know, draw quarters and, okay, this is what we're gonna do moving forward. But we can only do it together. I mean, we have to have council, we have to have the residents, have everybody on board with what the direction needs to be. And ultimately, it's my goal that for this budget, that when we come to June 12th, this isn't the first time council sees it.
Right.
So, I mean, I want public to see it. I want the committees to see it. It's the town's budget. I mean, yeah, I'm putting it together, but it's not my budget.
No, you want the
So,
rule of threes. Everyone needs to see
Yeah,
it. 3
everybody needs to see
times.
it.
Think about it. I just want to react to a couple things. One, I appreciate your reminder that while
we have a very fiscally conservative approach here. So any departure from our norms, we consider a crisis and it gets us motivated. We're not broke. That's
Right.
true. That's good. It's great to highlight the lack of debt because debt is what can really kill you.
Mhm.
Because you can't delay that. So that's really helpful. I also like something Chris said that I just want to emphasize from my own perspective. Making decisions quickly is really critical. And I know the town council feels this sense of urgency because you can always fix it if you overcorrect in a certain direction
Mhm.
or we didn't make the right decision, well, you adjust. But if we delay, we
Right.
don't get the time back. So that's great. Those were my comments. Yes, Greg.
So one other thing I wanted to comment on, you had asked a question about lease back. So putting it on the shelf isn't quite the word I would have used. I think we just look at it's in our back pocket. So we haven't started any active pursuing it, but we haven't said, oh yeah, no, we're gonna just not, we're gonna ignore this. I mean, I definitely look at that as a possibility. I mean, if we need some bridge financing, I mean, that may be the way we do it. So it's definitely not something that we're not thinking about. But we're just not actively pursuing it with the county and starting to come up with contracts. I don't know if that's helpful, but I just wanted to add that.
No, it is.
And based on that, I'd like to repeat that the fact that we don't have debt, I think is a great thing. And I think at least leaseback is debt. And I'd like to go on record as saying, I hope we don't go down that path.
Yeah, I think there's a reason it's basically, we're not pursuing it right now. But I also think if we get to a point where our runway's short, we think we have an answer, but our runway's too short, we're gonna have to do something. So, I mean, that's some kind of debt. And the question is the lease back the best kind of debt? So, but I think, I think that's a discussion for another time. Like I'm not proposing we should go into debt. Like, I don't think anybody wants to do that. But I think the good news is we have some options. And I think that's part of, and you guys have been great about that, is trying to get all these options on the table so that we see them and we, then we can put together a coherent plan.
It's
Okay,
got to
great.
be on the menu.
So at the next meeting, we're going to have a lot more actual numbers to,
I'm sorry.
well, the next meeting will have more numbers.
Yes.
To dig in on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're this close to finishing everything from January, so from July to December.
Okay, yeah, and as, if you get stuff early that we can share early ahead of the meeting, just let us know, because
Sure.
I think the more time committee members, even if it's going to be subject to change, I think certainly I'd benefit from being able to look through things
Right.
maybe a week ahead of time or whatever.
Okay.
So is our meeting definite, the 16th or whatever?
18.
Is that,
18th at 4. Yeah,
at least we have a quorum?
I sent round a hold on that, yeah.
Okay,
And,
I didn't know who couldn't make it.
Yeah, I haven't heard anyone not being able to make it yet. If
That way
anyone,
everyone here can make that? Everyone here?
2/18, which is a Tuesday, I believe, 4 PM. All right, I'm not hearing any objections. So that will be the plan. And
Yeah, that, having it on that day, I'll get your input. And that way I can get it into the staff report
okay,
for the council meeting the following Wednesday.
all right, that's brilliant.
And then I would really like to have finance committee.
Yeah.
Input.
Great. Well, we're looking forward to the numbers and starting to get into this thing as the town council is setting priorities and
Mhm.
you're wrestling with numbers, and we'll do what we can to ask
Right.
questions. More discussion on this, or are we?
Actually, I would like to just add to the priorities. I mean, yes, town council does give us direction, but, there could be things that we haven't thought of. And there could be things that we could pursue based on the collective minds that are here. So, when we go back through and you look at the town council priorities, if there's something not on that list and you think it's something that we should pursue or consider, let's bring it back at the next meeting. We can include it. Because I'll take any help I can get.
Any more discussion? All right, I think we're done. Do I have a motion to adjourn? All right, second.
Second.
All right, in favor? I won't do a roll call on this. Anyone object? No, okay.
Good with it.
All right, we're adjourned at 17:48.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for phoning in.